Welcome to the Seventh Beer of Oktoberfest. I am here with Renee Burgett.
Yes.
Yes. we just had a conversation about correct pronunciation. And speaking of correct pronunciation, I'm going to give this a try. This is Paulaner, which is a Märzen. This is from Germany, and so this will be our Oktoberfest beer for the Seventh Beer of Oktoberfest.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Cheers. Awesome.
All right, so today we are talking about flipping houses. I think everybody's watched a little bit of HGTV, seen the couple off in Waco. What are their names?
Chip and Joanna.
The Gaines, yes.
Yes,
Chip and Joanna Gaines. Sure, everybody has seen the Gaines on HGTV or heard somebody talking about it. So flipping houses is a big topic, and you flipped several, right?
I've flipped a few, yes. When I started, I've only been in real estate 4.5 years, so
Okay.
I flipped 4
All right.
to this
Well,
point.
all right.
Some small, some big.
Okay.
So I've learned a few things here and there, and it is not like HGTV says.
What? It is not. How can that be? HGTV is lying to us?
Yes, 100%. I mean, of course, you can't have all this time lapsed, and they just make it seem so simple and easy, and you have this great, wonderful finished product at the end. You do hope to have a great finished product, but it's not always so simple and easy.
And it doesn't take an hour after you knock out the wall.
No, it doesn't take an hour after you walk off the wall. And you don't have a lot of, like Chip and Joanna Gaines, you don't have a lot of those humorous moments. Although you do need to keep a good sense of humor.
So maybe not so much laughter, maybe some crying and or yelling potentially?
Yes, I will say it is, especially on the bigger projects, it definitely is a little bit more stressful.
Mm-hmm.
Just because there's so many more moving parts on a bigger project versus what I would call a simple flip, which would just be cosmetic type things. But on a larger project, when you are moving walls, moving plumbing, taking out walls and adding beams and all kinds of those types of things, that can be a lot.
Yeah.
And you remember you're still trying to stay within a concise time frame, because that's part of flipping, is you need to get it done in under 90 days.
So that holding cost, if you're over 90 days,
it really starts to eat into your profit. So you want to get it in under 90 days as much as you can.
Yeah.
And so on the bigger ones, that can be challenging.
Well, and you're a full-time realtor. So
Yes.
How do you get that done inside 90 days? Are you doing all that work yourself?
Not all the time. So I try to enlist the help of my husband and my sons, of course, who are 23 and 20. My husband being a full-time farmer, depending on the season that I happen to be in the middle of a project, depends on if he can help along or not. So I do hire a lot of it out. That's probably my biggest piece of advice to people when you're trying to do a flip is you really need to have your team set up before you go into a project. And it needs to be a team of people that will show up every day. That they will show up every day and work on that house just like it was their own. That they can trust you. That you can trust them to not overcharge you or stick you with an extra bill at the end of the job or anything like that. You need to have that team of people, whether it be painters, cabinetry, flooring, electrical, whatever. You need to assimilate that team before you just dive off into flipping a house.
So don't buy the house first, then try to find the team and chew up half or all of your 90 days.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and also you can also get yourself into a lot of trouble that way, because what if you bought a house, assembled a team really fast, and then half the people don't show up? And then you've got to go find another team. And, we don't want that. You don't want that. So assimilate your team. So it's not just assimilating a team of contractors. It's also assimilating, who's your finance person? Are you going to pay cash for this property, or are you financing it? You need to have that person because they're going to be your biggest advocate too. And you need to know exactly what their fees are, how much they're going to charge you in interest to carry that note. Yeah. Are they going to help you maybe carry a renovation loan. So again, it's not out of your pocket. You know, you've got to have all those people. And even I would say a title company, you need to have your title company person. You have to have everything. All the little gears have to be there to make the wheel go round. And if you leave one of those little gears out, it can be detrimental.
So definitely not something to go in and say, I found this house in my neighborhood. It's a little bit of a wreck. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to flip it. And that's, so start with, let me assemble a team of people who can do this.
Yes.
Then go find the house.
And then go find the house, yeah. Unless, of course, you have the reserves to purchase a house like that and sit on it a little bit while you assimilate. You know, everybody gets into this business in different levels. I mean, some more entry level. Some people have a little bit larger cash reserves that they can pull from, or maybe a private financing. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're doing some private sector stuff, but it really depends. I mean, there's so many ways that you can accomplish this goal. Yeah. I would say not just HGTV, but we've all seen those seminars that come to town.
Yes.
And they're going to teach you to go buy a house at the tax sale, or they're going to teach you how to do all this, and you're going to spend the next 6 months mailing out postcards, and they really are trying to sell you their training kit. I have seen a few people be somewhat successful with that. Not the greatest successful, but again, it really depends on the person. So you really need to have somewhat of an understanding of how real estate works, and before you just jump into this. So don't just go take somebody's weekend seminar, or like just recently I had a conversation with a young lady who's of the millennial age, and she was getting all her real estate advice and information from TikTok. And
what? That's not a legitimate source of.
And so I had to sit there and listen to her spouting all these things that she thought she knew were correct, and tried to educate her along the way. And I don't know that I was super successful, because she thinks TikTok has the brains to it all.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
To be fair, I get a lot of my so when we're flipping a house, and it's usually for us it's a rental, but when we're going and working on it, I learned how to do most of my stuff off of YouTube, which is slightly better than TikTok, I think.
Well, and that's true. I mean, that's true. If you get into a situation in a house, because you don't know, once you tear into that wall, what you're going to find. Mm-hmm. You don't know. You're going to see the good, the bad, and the ugly of all the generations before you that did it the correct way or the incorrect way. Yeah. So sometimes we do need to go to that YouTube. And that's what I always tell my boys. It's funny. I always tell my boys, there's nothing in this world, the excuse of I don't know is no longer a valid point.
Right.
Because we literally have information at our fingertips. Right. So if you don't know, look it up on YouTube. Somebody knows. Somebody's made a video about it.
So speaking of your boys, who's your team? Who's your renovation team that does all your work? And what parts do they play in that?
So I have a great, I'll start with my major players. So I have my lender, mm-hmm. my lender that helps me do my projects, Sean Cody, out of the Lubbock shallow water area. He's actually now the vice president over at Citizen State Bank in Anton. Mm-hmm. So he's my number one lender. He's who I go to for help with financing and renovation loans and all that kind of stuff. And then I have a great team. It's a husband and wife team that actually found them through another client who found them on Craigslist.
Oh, wow.
And I'm always skeptical hiring anybody off Craigslist until I see their work. But these two have become a gem, and they've really become like family to us. But he and his wife, and they do everything from sheetrock, tape and texture, to tile, to flooring, paint. I mean, he can do just about anything for me except electrical and plumbing. Mm-hmm. He can do just about anything. So they really are my first go-to set of contractors. And then I have another young man who is a cabinet maker. and he actually works for a local cabinet shop, but he does some side jobs. And so when I need some cabinet facelifts, if you would, where you're just replacing the doors and the drawers, I can call him, and it's nice, So that's that, and my electrician is Gray Slide Electric. I love Eric. He's wonderful to work with. And my plumber is Stan the Drain Man. I can call any of those guys at any time or text them, and they are quick to respond and quick to show up and are always reasonably priced, but always I can trust their work 100%.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And if I actually need a wall framed or I need something like that, that's usually where I call on my husband for some of those types of things. Or he has much more the artistic eye than I do sometimes, or creativity. He has a lot more of that. So if I'm struggling with something, I go back to him and ask for his assistance on something. My boys help me with just about anything I need if I can get them in there. They've banned me from painting. It's a family rule. Mom is not allowed to paint. Lots of stories about that, but I usually...
You want to give us an example story of why?
I usually end up with so much more paint on me. Like, everybody's always like, how did you get it all over you? And I'm like, I don't know. It just happens. My husband actually used to have a construction business where he did drywall, tape, and texture and all that. And, and I would help him from time to time. And same thing, I would come home just covered in mud, and he again was like, how do you get so messy? It's just my talent. It's just my talent. But my boys help with things like painting, or they're really helpful with changing out electrical fixtures, some of those smaller things that they may not be, they're not necessarily going to know plumbing or electrical. So, but they can help me change out ceiling fans and things like that with YouTube's help.
Exactly. So what should people watch out for if they're trying to get into flipping? If they've seen a little HGTV, if they get a little inspired, what are the pitfalls that maybe you could warn them off from?
Well, I think the biggest thing is have realistic expectations. You need to, if you're a first timer and don't really know how to do this, you need to contact a real estate agent who knows what they've done, who maybe has flipped, or they just know the market really well, whatever. But that's going to be your number one source, because on HGTV and these other shows or these weekend seminar things, a lot of these are not based in your local area. So let's say, for instance, like some of these guys on HGTV are in California. And so they have these huge price swings. And they're like, look, we bought this house for $200,000. We renovated it for $150,000. We sold it for $800,000. That's not really likely in most markets. So you really need to know the market. And your market's going to change depending on the location, even within one city.
Sure.
So you really need to know the market well enough and know the numbers. What's it going to take for you to buy it? What's it going to take for you to renovate it? And then what's your projected sales? And can you really make money?
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing that I think people go into this with, these grandiose expectations that they're going to make $100,000, when in reality, you might just walk away with 10 grand in your pocket. Or 20 grand, and it's like a builder that I know that flips a few houses. He told me one time on a flip he did, and he pocketed 20 grand. He said, hey, $20,000, that's still a nice payday.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's so true. That's so true. So some projects you will, of course, have a greater profit than others. Some you may make 10 grand, some you may make 30 grand, some may make 40 grand. It just depends on those numbers. So you need to know your numbers. And if you don't know your numbers, contact your agent. Let your agent help direct you to to say, yes, this is a good area. Yes, look what the projected sales once a home is renovated, what it could sell for. You know, one of the best pieces of advice that I received from my broker, Gene McGuire, he said, if it works on paper, then it will work. And that was probably because I was in the biggest renovation project I had done on a home. And it was a very large project, and it was a lot of money, and it was, the anxiety level was up there because there was so much money involved, and it was such a huge project. And so many times I'd be going back to his office, you know, and he knew I was nervous and I just needed some reassurance. And he kept telling me that, Renee, if the numbers work on paper, then it's going to work. And guess what? He was right. He was right.
Gene's usually right.
He's usually right.
It does seem like that. Yes.
Yes.
So have you ever talked to anyone who's flipped one? I've never talked to anyone who flipped one and lost money. Have you talked to someone who flipped a house and lost money, or have you heard the stories like that?
I have heard a few stories like that. And I think, too, going back to that realistic expectations.
Sure.
Is we don't, you know, if you're buying a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, you know, that's in that starter home family neighborhood, well, we don't need to have marble floors.
Right.
We don't need to add extra insulation to the attic. We don't need to do some of these things. And that's what sometimes people get into, and that's where I see them lose money, is they do more than what was really needed to make the project happen and be profitable.
Right.
And still produce a quality product.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing with flipping. You know it as well as I do. We can walk into some flip projects, and I call them lipstick on a pig flips. We all have seen those, and it's like, wow, all they did was come in here and slap a bunch of paint up, put some floors down, and change out the light and plumbing fixtures. And they're calling it, you know, totally renovated. So it's always important to me that my name is associated with this, that I produce a good quality project that, you know, that a homeowner is going to be happy to have.
Yeah.
That's important to me. I don't want somebody to walk in and think that this was a lipstick on a pig.
Yeah.
And I can always spot those, like, and just as you can.
Sure. And there are a lot of those out there.
There are a lot of those out there. Mm-hmm. There are. So you've got to really learn to know what's important.
No.
And that's going to determine where your profit margin to, you know. Do you really need the $500 light fixture, or can you probably get by with a $150 light fixture? Lights are still lights. You know, as long as we have a kitchen light and it still goes with your design theme, do we really need to go the extra route and get a $500 one when we could probably get a $150 one?
Right.
You know, so keep realistic expectations. Mm-hmm.
That sounds like good advice.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And if someone wants to flip a house, should they call you?
Sure, I'd be glad. Of course. Or
of
you.
Course.
We're both agents. Yeah. Of course. I mean, and I'm always willing to share what I've learned.
Yeah.
I'm always willing to share. You know, you go back to, you said, what are some of the things we should look out for? Mm-hmm. I think the biggest thing, and this is coming from the real estate agent side. Mm-hmm. So once you finish that project and a buyer comes along and wants to buy that house, okay, they're going to get a property inspection. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that property inspection is going to show the electrical, the HVAC, the plumbing, the everything. Well, maybe in your project, you were so focused on just the cosmetics of things, you didn't look at that electrical panel. Well, guess what? That electrical panel may be a Federal Pacific, which has been recalled and needs to be upgraded. Yeah. So now you've completed the project, but now you have a buyer come along and they want you to replace that electrical panel. Yeah. That wasn't in your budget.
Right.
So I always tell people, when you go into a flip, before you start the flip project, go ahead and get a property inspection. Have a home inspector so you know what a buyer is going to be looking at. And then that's when also contact your agent and say, hey, here's this property inspection I got. So before I begin this project, is there anything on here that are safety hazards or something that you see that I'm going to
Sure.
need to replace.
Sure.
So electrical panels are a big thing. CSST gas lines that those are not normally used now, but in older homes they're very
Which a lot of people are flipping or buying those older ones flipping.
Yeah, you buy an older home and flip it. CSST gas lines, that's a big one that they need to be grounded. Okay, so that, and then also I would say the next thing is get a plumbing inspection. Because the last thing you want to know after you've spent 50 or 60 grand or whatever remodeling a project is that now the whole sewer line has to be replaced and you're out another 4 to 6 grand.
Right.
That's the last thing you want.
Right.
So it's worth it to pay that $150 and get that plumbing inspection so you know exactly what you're looking at.
Yeah.
So those are my biggest pitfalls I think people don't think about originally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that gives you a great punch list too, because the inspector who comes and checks the house for you, the next inspector is going to find those same things. And if you've already cleared them out, that just gives a cleaner report to that next buyer.
Gives a cleaner report, and then that next buyer is so much more willing to buy your house.
Right.
Because they're like, oh wow, we're getting a great house.
Yeah.
It doesn't have all these problems.
Yeah.
And you're like, yes, awesome. Mission accomplished. So, yeah.
That's cool. We are back with Renee to find out about Renee. So Renee, you said earlier you've been in real estate for 4.5 years.
Yes.
What did you do before that?
Whew, I was the chief cook and bottle washer for a lot of stuff. It's like, gosh, how far do you want me to go back? Essentially, I homeschooled my children.
Okay.
And I homeschooled them all the way through, kindergarten on.
That is a full-time job and a heck of a commitment.
Yes, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was great. And so also during some of those years, I worked part-time as a mail carrier.
Okay.
And that's kind of where my whole passion in real estate was fueled, was out of that job. I never intended to get into real estate to be a real estate agent. That was never my intention, but God just kind of took it and ran with it. So at the time I'm homeschooling and working part-time at the post office as a mail carrier. My husband and I were also youth pastors and children's pastors. So we served in a lot of different ministries over the years in different local churches as pastors of children's and youth. And so that was all going on. We had very busy, full lives. And a gentleman that was in one of my customers on my mail route, he and I would always visit every Saturday when I would come deliver his mail. He was an elderly gentleman. We would visit and talk about everything under the sun, politics, religion, just anything in the world. And we developed a great friendship. And we would begin talking about real estate and how people make money and those kinds of things. And I'd always had a passion to do something with real estate because I knew that every financially independent person that I knew, whether personally or on a public level, had their hand in real estate in some form or fashion. And so when I started looking at that, I realized how much I did not know. And so I had to take my own advice that I always tell my children that in this day and age to say I don't know, that's invalid.
Sure.
We have so much information at our fingertips. And so I had to take my own advice, and I decided to start taking some classes when I realized how much I didn't know. And so this gentleman helped me. He said, you know what, I'll help pay for your classes. Yep. So it worked out great. He really paid it forward and helped me enter into a whole different career path. So that's where it kind of just took off on its own from there. And it's we stepped out of ministry in 2016, and I got my license in the spring of 2017. And it's now become a ministry of its own for me.
That's cool.
Because now I get to interact with people in different times of their life, and it's always times of growth in some direction, whether it be a new family, newly married, having their first child, or maybe it's a divorce, maybe it's a death, there's all kinds of different things. And those are some really high stressful situations that people need somebody who really cares about them and not just a commission check.
Right.
And so that's how I got into real estate, and how I continue to operate my business is more like a ministry of just, who does God want me to work with today?
That's cool.
So, yeah.
You want to tell us who it is that got you into?
Sure. His name is Ted Holloman.
Okay.
Yeah. He is still a great friend. We still have lunch once a quarter. We go meet somewhere and have lunch and just chit chat and keep up on life. And yeah, he's been real special to me.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I hope that one day I can do the same for someone else. Help change and pay it forward to them.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, what do you do when you're not doing real? I know that's a full-time gig of its own, and now that the boys are grown, you can dedicate yourself fully to that. But what do you do outside that?
Outside of real estate. Whew.
Yeah, okay, first, is there an outside of real estate? Because between flipping and being an agent, that could...
I will say, a lot of times people get into real estate and I've had this said to me so many times, and it always makes me kind of chuckle. And they're like, oh, don't you just love having a job that's so flexible? And I just want to laugh at them. And I'm like, because if you're not careful, this business will consume 24/7, 365 of your life. So you have to be very careful with that.
Yeah.
So outside of real estate, my husband and I farm.
Yep.
So my husband is a fourth generation farmer. We live on the family farm. So there's a lot of responsibilities with that I do the bookkeeping side of things and take care of that. I have my own rental properties. So that's a whole nother business on its own. So I have, selling real estate here and flipping houses and having rental properties. And then we have a farm. So we have a very full life. But I have two boys, 23 and 20. My oldest, Corbin, is a musician. And he has his own band, Tex Westus. And they are a country music band, he and his fiancée, Chloe. And they keep us busy on the weekends. So we get to go see them and travel and support them and help them. Many times you will find me running a merchandise table at some of their events. Or setting up, tearing down, or whatever it might be, whatever they need me to help with.
Sure.
So that's a whole nother business on its own. And then my youngest son, Garrett, is training to be a pilot.
Oh, wow.
And so if I can ever snag the chance to jump in the airplane with him and get up in the air for a little while, I love that. So, and then the rest of the time, I fall down in my chair exhausted and I sleep. That's what I do.
Something I know you're doing right now, which is real estate oriented, but also above and beyond, is you're working through the Texas Realtors leadership program. So can you tell us about that?
Yes. So that is a program that the Texas Realtors of Texas put together. I cannot remember the date that it started, but it's a program that they only host every 2 years.
Oh, wow. Yep.
And it is a 10-month program. And you are placed with a group of realtors that some may or may not be familiar to you in your town. And the Lubbock area, we actually join with the Amarillo area.
Okay.
So it's a group of Lubbock, Amarillo, and then a few ladies from the Pampa area. We are in this group together. Or all of us, not just ladies, but we're all in this group together. So this program takes you through different trainings and equipping you to be a better leader, not just in your business, but in your community. Mm-hmm. So that's what the Texas Realtors Leadership Program does. That's so cool. It teaches you everything about communication, what kind of style of communicator you are. It teaches you everything about public speaking, to also serving on local boards and charities and things of that nature. So it's kind of like just broadening your influence within your business.
That's cool. Mm-hmm. So how far are you into it? You said it's a 10-month program.
Yes, so we actually graduate in 3 weeks.
Oh, wow. All right. All right.
Yeah, we just had our last meeting just this last week in Austin, where we were able to go to the state capitol and really get a good education on governmental affairs and how it relates to real estate in Texas. And that was our final class, and now we graduate in 3 weeks.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And you also have a GRI. If you want to tell us what is a GRI and what does that involve?
So Graduate Realtor Institute is what GRI stands for, and that is another training program that as realtors we go through.
Not all realtors.
Not all, but
you
choose to do it.
Sure.
You choose to do it, and it really hones in your skills. So I don't want to make this flippant to say anybody can get a real estate license, but I mean you can. You really can, but not all licensed realtors let me rephrase that. Not all licensed agents are realtors.
Right.
Not all licensed agents are proficient in their job.
Yeah.
And that's where the GRI and the TRLP really come together to hone your skills, to make you more efficient, and to just make you more knowledgeable of your job.
Yeah.
And help you be more effective to those that you serve.
Yeah.
Versus just being a licensed agent.
Right. And that GRI is a big, to me it seems like a big deal. It's an additional 90 hours.
90 hours
above
of
and
education.
beyond
Mm-hmm.
the education you normally have to have. You go and it's 12 days, 3-4 day blocks, full day that you're taking away from your career.
Yes.
The time you could be chasing real estate deals to get this education so that
Absolutely.
you're better the rest of the time.
Absolutely. It is a commitment.
Yeah.
It is a commitment, 100%, and it's not cheap. It is not cheap, and it is time consuming, but it is so worth it. I've learned so much in the GRI program. So I definitely can say I'm a better agent for it.
That's cool.
Definitely say that. Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So we're on the farm today.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the farm. We're sitting in one. Well, tell us where we are.
Okay, so we're sitting in the building that we call the dairy barn. Okay, it doesn't look like a dairy barn
It does
now.
not look like. It looks like a dairy barn from the outside.
From the outside, yes. So this farm actually started in the early 40s, and it was a full working dairy farm. And we still have all the barns. We still have all the structures. And this is one of the original structures. And this is where they would bring the cattle in to milk them and filter the milk, process it, bottle it, refrigerate it, and that such thing, and then sell it to the public back in the early 40s and so on. And this whole entire farm was built by my husband's great-grandfather.
Wow.
So it's a really neat thing. We still have the milk cans and the bottles and everything stamped with the family farm name on them.
Oh, wow.
We still have a lot of that in storage, so that's pretty cool. I still have original milk crates and bottles and everything. So this building is pretty special. It had fallen into disrepair once the shift from being a dairy farm to being a cotton farm. Mm-hmm. So once the family farm transitioned into cotton farming, this use of this building just became more of storage, and it just collected a lot of junk over 40 years' time.
As any spare building does.
As any spare building does, of all the family. And so, about 4 years ago, my husband came out here, and he just started clearing this out and cleaning this out. And it took him about a 2-year project.
Oh, wow.
And he did everything in this building by hand. Some of the things are still original. We still have the original drains in the floor where milk and things would drain out. So that's kind of neat to see some of those things. But he's made this into a little guest house.
That's
It's got a bedroom and a bathroom, a full kitchen, living, and we're sitting in the living room.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's a really neat place.
That's very cool. And so this would be another flip for you guys, essentially, except not just
right.
a flip. This was beyond flipping something because this was never meant to be a house or a guest house.
Right. This was never meant to be. Although I'm still trying to talk him into letting me do it on an Airbnb, but he doesn't want to share. He doesn't want to share it. But when we do have family or friends come, they love to stay out here. They love to stay out here, and so So on the outside, it still just looks like an old stucco barn. Doesn't look like anything, but the inside has been completely transformed. Yeah.
Well, after the video, let's talk about Airbnb. Because
Okay.
I think this would be perfect for that.
Yes. Yes.
So, working on the farm, studying, continuing your education, chasing 2 sons around,
Yes.
chasing a husband around.
Yes. 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 I mean, and then I love to be here.
Yeah.
Like, this is my happy place.
Yeah.
On the farm, where I don't live in town. I live outside of town, and it's just quiet, and it's a nice place to come and deflate at the end of a day.
Bet so.
And it's just nice to sit on the porch and just deflate. And there's so much history here that it's comforting.
Yeah.
It's very comforting to be here to me. So, it really is a happy place for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing your happy place with me
Yeah.
and chatting with me and us about
Sure.
flipping houses.
Yeah.
So,
thanks for having
you
me.
bet. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.